Hey there, folks. We're getting close to the end of 2024, which means it's time to start planning our 2025 Kokanee fishing adventures. So today, I thought I'd just go over sort of my top picks for lakes that are most likely to have 20-inch kokanee. A 20-inch kokanee is sort of like that. That is an achievement that a lot of people set out to catch a giant 20-inch kokanee, and there's lots of opportunities to do so. So today, specifically, I'm going to pick what I think is the top recommended lake for each state or province. Now, not all states and provinces that support kokanee are going to have any opportunity to catch a 20-inch kokanee. So in this map here, basically, I have all of the states or provinces that have active kokanee programs. If the states are in red, I'm not even going to talk about them because I just don't think they have a good chance of producing a 20-inch kokanee. The states in yellow, there's a pretty good chance that if you put in your time there, you might come away with a 20-inch kokanee. And the states that are in green, I think, have the best opportunity to catch a 20-inch kokanee. So let's get started. So we're going to start close to home for me, which is Lake Roosevelt. This is the lower end of Lake Roosevelt. For those not familiar with this is the northeast part of Washington State. It's a massive reservoir. Thankfully, the kokanee are generally concentrated in the lower third of the reservoir. And I think it's going to be a really good year for big kokanee on this lake, because typically what happens is we have really good years when we don't have a big drawdown. And last year was the poorest drawdown I've ever seen. And what happens is those fish don't tend to outmigrate as much, so more kokanee tend to get trapped in the reservoir, more big kokanee, and it just makes the fishing better. And it's a La Nina year, so we should be getting a large quantity of snow, although it hasn't come yet. But if we do get good snowpack in the Northern Rockies, then they're going to have to draw down the reservoir, which will concentrate those big kokanee. I'm going to talk more about specifically how to fish this reservoir. I'm going to do a separate video because it is a very dynamic kokanee fishery where these fish are highly migratory throughout the year in this reservoir. But I'll do a more advanced series for my patrons and community members later on this reservoir. But I just think it's going to be a really good one. I think if you go out there and you put in a few days, you're probably going to come away with a 20-inch kokanee, almost guaranteed. So it's a very big reservoir once you find them, though. And if they get concentrated, like I hope they're going to, it should be game on. Should be a really good spring for this. So that's my choice for Washington State. We're going to head north to British Columbia. Now, there's a lot of really nice kokanee fisheries in British Columbia that hold fish in the 16 to 19-inch range, but there's not a lot that kick out fish routinely over 20. But one of those is Kalamalka Lake. It's between the towns of Kelowna and Vernon. It's actually a pretty large reservoir. There's just an even more massive reservoir right next to it, which makes it look small. But it has consistently produced fish over 20 inches for many years. It isn't as consistent as it used to be, but I still see good numbers of 20-inch fish pulled out of there, especially in the latter half of the summer when the fish are at their maximum size. It's a very deep lake, though, so be prepared to go deep. Then we're going to jump south to Oregon, and I think really only got one shot here, and that is, of course, Wallowa Lake. This is the lake that produced the world record kokanee. It isn't as consistent as it used to be. There's a lot of different age classes in the lake, but still there's that really good chance of connecting with large fish in this lake, especially in the spring. Trolling shallow along that north shore there can be really productive, but also jigging late in the season on the southern end of the lake can be very productive as well. So next up, going south to California. No secret, New Melones has been just crazy good fishing for the past few years. In fact, California just seems to be on the uptick. I feel like it's the new up-and-coming kokanee fishery state. There's just so many fisheries there coming into prime, a lot of fish in the 16 to 20-inch class. But I think New Melones is probably your best bet for a 20-inch kokanee. It's not guaranteed. There's a lot of different age classes in the lake, which is great for the future of that fishery. It's also a very large reservoir, so it's and can be very finicky, but it's definitely your best shot at a 20-inch kokanee in the state of California. Going to Idaho, I feel like Idaho's in a bit of a downturn. A lot of its reservoirs have seemed to have gotten a smaller grade of kokanee recently. Like even the fish I'm seeing out of Anderson Ranch and stuff are looking a lot smaller. They're more abundant, but just the big fish days seem to have come and gone. But one not very large lake in northern Idaho still consistently kicks out several 20-inch kokanee every year. In fact, a lot of people I know have caught their personal best there. Is Lake Hayden, and it fishes pretty well starting from the time that it ices out in the spring, which is usually February to March, depending on the year. And it fishes well all through the summer. It does have a lot of recreational traffic in the summertime, so get there early. But yeah, if you want a chance at a 20-inch kokanee in Idaho, I think this is your best bet for 2025. And then, of course, jumping east to Montana, it's no secret, Holter Lake, everybody knows about it. I really feel like if you go out there and put in your time, you're going to come away with a 20-inch kokanee. The fish there are just absolutely massive, and it's awesome. It's a very challenging fishery in that those fish tend to be surface-oriented, especially in the early summer. But once they start dropping deeper, they get a lot easier to find, and you can get away from all the rainbow trout if you want to. The rainbow trout fishery in that lake is also phenomenal, so definitely worth doing if you want to get into a 20-inch kokanee. I feel like Holter and Lake Roosevelt are, both the sort of high probability 20-inch kokanee lakes. So if you get into a few fish, you're probably going to get one above 20. Then we're going to jump to the south in Wyoming. I think that in Wyoming right now is the best state in the United States for giant kokanee. In fact, this is the only state where I have a tie. So Fontenelle Reservoir, which is in very remote southwest Wyoming. It's a great reservoir for 20-inch kokanee. I think every time I've gone there, I've touched a fish over 20 inches. And the fish tend to be surface-oriented for most of the year, so you're not really going to graph them. So you have to kind of cover your water, but find those areas that they're hanging out in. But it's a great fishery. Also a great rainbow trout fishery, too, and brown trout in there. So definitely worth checking out. And of course, this is tied, of course, with Flaming Gorge. Now, specifically on the Wyoming side, I'm saying, so basically from the pipeline north up to Buckboard is probably your best shot at 20-inch kokanee. It isn't as easy as it used to be, but it's still a really good fishery, still worth going after. The locals got spoiled like during its heyday when it was just easy to go out and whack 4 and 5 pound kokanee and get a limit of them. The fishery's having some problems. It's struggling a bit with predation issues from the overpopulated lake trout in that reservoir. But there's still big 20-inch kokanee caught out there. I mean, I had a subscriber went there this summer and they got 2 fish over 5 pounds. And those were 24-inch kokanee. So still definitely worth doing. And then we're going to jump south to Utah. Notice in this one, I'm not going to say Flaming Gorge because while the Flaming Gorge kokanee fishery in Utah is very good and absolutely beautiful, very stunning with the cliffs, 20-inch fish in that lower end of the reservoir are not common. But you don't have to go very far away to Strawberry Reservoir, which has been consistently kicking out 20-inch kokanee for the past few years. I don't see any reason that's going to change. It's a very stunning reservoir set in a mix of grasslands and aspens and pine forests. It's just so beautiful to be there. There's no cities around it. It's a really enjoyable place. The winds do come up there, but you can usually find some protection on both sides of the reservoir. You can find these big kokanee. So just kind of got to look at the local reports, talk to the local marinas, and see what's happening. But definitely a good shot at some really big kokanee and, of course, some really big cutthroat trout as well. All right, now we're going to go east out of Utah to Colorado. And 11 Mile Reservoir is probably your best bet for a 20-inch kokanee. I don't feel like Colorado actually focuses on kokanee management that well, and especially not on producing large kokanee. I think that really 11 miles just by accident, like decent kokanee fishery. There's just a lot of predation pressure from other fisheries there that keeps the kokanee numbers low enough that some of the individuals that do survive there do get big. But it's a really tough fishery to find kokanee consistently. But if you want to stay in Colorado and get a 20-inch kokanee, 11 miles is probably your best bet. All right, so that rounds out my list. Just going back and looking at this map, if you're really obsessed with connecting with a 20-inch kokanee in 2025, I would suggest spending your time in either Washington, Montana, or Wyoming. If you want to stay closer to home, there's opportunities that exist in British Columbia, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and California as well. All of these places have some really good kokanee fisheries. In fact, if I had to just pick a state that I want to spend my most time in terms of, or province, I would say that I would be split between either California, British Columbia, because just the sheer quantity of kokanee fisheries available, where the average size is going to be above 16 inches. There's a lot of fisheries in those states with really decent sized kokanee. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the comment section. I will get back to you. I'll see you guys next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder.